6 months of editing. This whole thing is in the wrong aspect ratio. I am not going to fix this. I'm so sorry. Just please deal. So about half a year ago, back when I was still happy about quarantine, I was bored and looking for games after practically voring 3 100-hour games in less time than it takes most people to blink. I remembered one of my favorite YouTubers from a while back named NerdCubed and reminisced about all his videos and remembered one game in particular that he highly praised. Keep in mind this was before the hype of the reveal for all the new TWEWY things like the animation and new game, so the TWEWY fanbase had been practically dead for a significant period of time. I got the game and going in expected nothing more than something to fill some time. I met the characters, played a little, and finished a week-long game and was like, wow, that was short and underwhelming. After sobbing because of the correlations to my sex life, I continued on a little bit and found that it was a fake ending. My interest mildly piqued, I continued on a little bit. That was around the time I first got the feeling that maybe I loved this game. A long time later, with the game fully finished and several large TWEWY projects on the way, I decided that now would be a good time to talk about my opinions of the game, and why this game is in probably my top 5 favorite games ever. Let's get some things out of the way. The version of the game that I played was the final remix on the Switch. There are, however, 3 different versions out there. The original on the DS, the solo remix on the phone and iPad, and final remix on the Switch. The differences are mostly in 3 aspects: the combat, the soundtrack and graphics, which I've lumped together in the one point, and New Day, which I'll talk about later. The combat will also come later. The soundtrack and graphics in essence are just different. TWEWY just has an amazing soundtrack either way. The thing that really hooks me about the OST is that it's so weird. Like this song called Calling Kingdom Mix is titled on YouTube Calling Kingdom Mix which now that I've investigated, it makes sense that it's from Kingdom Hearts. This song is, if I remember correctly, in TWEWY Final Remix soundtrack. Like, this playlist with every TWEWY song has 6 iterations of Calling, and it's included in probably 3 different mashups. It's insane. Either way, Calling is a very interesting song. If you hear it outside the game without having context of when it plays and you've never played the game, you really just don't know what impression to get. But when you hear it in the game, it just fits. I'm not sure how to put it other than that the whole OST is similar. It's really funky, very interesting genre, but you hear it, it's playing, and it just works. Before I dive in, all I'm going to say is that I'll tell you the opening of the game. Not really spoiler territory because this is all what happens in the first 5 minutes. The game opens off with quite the interesting monologue from our man of the hour, Neku Sakuraba. Classy, spiky orange hair and the weirdest fashion sense in Shibuya gives him away as a protagonist. Also, yeah, it's in Shibuya. You're absolutely vibing and monologuing about how people should keep their distance and are just too hard to understand, when suddenly you inceptionize and wake up in the middle of the street. Classic. People suddenly don't notice you and walk right through you. Also, you mysteriously awoke with no knowledge about the 2 pins in your hand. Without time to question it, you're attacked by frogs. Contrary to most popular JRPGs, there are no slimes unless you count this slimy backstabbing bat. At this point, without realizing it, Neku is now a participant in the game. With no way to defend yourself, you bolt, and the opening sequence plays. The game's opening setting is amazing. You'll hear me say it a lot, but one of my favorite things about this game is the characters, especially the main one. At no point is Neku just a projection of you. You have some limited control over his attitude, but big decisions and moments come down to him. The way he's presented at first as a distant, edgy sass monster leaves so much room for growth, and this game takes big advantage of that. Now that the basics are out of the way, I'm going to kick up the speed just a little and go straight into spoiler territory. If you don't want that, skip to here where I'll go into combat. Basically, quick rundown, spoiler sensitive, be gone. TWEWY takes place over 3 weeks. The reason I specify TWEWY is because of a very important thing. In the game I'm talking about here, The World Ends With You, that's the game, the plot revolves around a game. This game is what the characters are partaking in. The language gets confusing very fast. When I say the game, I'm referring to the one Neku's playing. When I say TWEWY, I'm referring to the game that this video is talking about. So basically, the game is a week-long event. It takes place in what the people running the game refer to as the underground Shibuya. Also, the players is the people playing the game. Damn this naming system. Big spoiler, all of the players are dead. That's why they're playing the game. In reality, you're all basically just ghosts, except for when you're in buildings marked specifically. Those are shops so that the players can eat and buy shit, a mechanic I'll talk about in the combat section. All winners of the game get to come back to life and get back their entrance fee. What is the entrance fee though? The entrance fee is the thing you hold most dear. Now keep in mind that all of this is explained to all players of the game, and then the entrance fee is taken. So then why doesn't Neku, a player, know all this? Well, that's because of his entrance fee. I'll get back to that later when I talk more about the characters, but other than that, just know that Neku doesn't understand what the fuck is going on. Back to the story. You wake up, frogs, run, opening sequence. So you're making a run for it, when all of a sudden, some girl jumps you and asks to make a pact. And Neku eloquently shows off his linguistic competence, and simply yet powerfully states, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Bada bing, bada boom, and she hands you a pin similar to the ones you woke up with. The game throws you back into battle, and, using the pin, you proceed to pull a PETA and fucking euthanize those frogs. Neku has very questionable morals. Then you do some experimenting. The black pins let you read minds and find enemies to fight, henceforth referred to as noise. You are given a message asking you to go somewhere. Shiki explains to you that you're a fucking idiot, and that the game is a week-long thing where each day you're given a task that you have to do in order to survive the day. Fail and face erasure. Twei really likes rubbing that one in your face. You might be asking about the discrepancy here. Earlier I said that Twei takes place over 3 weeks, but I've constantly been saying that the game is 1 week long. This is a very large plot point. After week 1, the first game concludes. For reasons I don't quite remember, only Shiki is allowed to live again. Basically, at the end of week 1's game, the conductor says, "Hey, fuck you, only one person lives." Beat at this point has already lost Rhyme and has already joined the Reapers. And if you don't recognize those names, don't worry, you will later, because I fucked up the order of telling you about people. And Neku regains his old entrance fee, which were his memories. Well, mine is how he died, he still doesn't really remember that. Afterward, however, Neku regains his old entrance fee, but since he can't come back to life yet, he needs to play the game again, meaning he needs to give a new entry fee. Over the course of the week, it turns out that he finally managed to not be an asshole anymore and care about something other than himself. Shiki. After Shiki gets to live again, she is taken immediately as Neku's entrance fee. So day 1 of week 1 basically happens again. Same task, same issue of being unable to fight, since now he lost his old pact and can no longer use pins to fight, and needs a new pact. Randomly, a pact is formed, and he can fight. After the fight, he meets Joshua, the guy who kinda jumped the pack on him. Over the course of the week, Neku learns to sort of like Joshua and the other players of the game. Also, by the way, in week 1, Neku and Shiki befriend a different pact duo, the siblings Beat and Rhyme. However, Rhyme, Beato, gets killed. Beat goes apeshit and joins the Reapers, the people sort of enforcing the game. His end goal, however, is to find Rhyme, but that comes out later. Back to Nekua, Joshua is trying to get into a place called the Shibuya River that is mysteriously blocked. Joshua is also kinda secretive and sort of weird, and Neku begins to distrust him. Then they meet a dude named Hanakoma. He's cool and tells Neku to trust his partner, and Neku just takes that shit straight to heart. They also meet the composer for that game, Sho Minamimoto. Oh yeah, for each of the 3 games there's a different composer. Week 1 guy is unimportant, and week 2 guy is Sho Minamimoto, and he becomes very important later. Actually, that's not really accurate. The composer is the guy who is behind all of this. Conductor is his right-hand man, and game master is the term I meant here. The 3 guys I just listed were not actually composers. By the way, that conductor I mentioned is this guy who you meet in this white space looking ass place in between the games that you've played. Also, by this point, after reading Joshua's mind, which, keep in mind, players cannot read each other's minds, Neku finds in Joshua's head that Joshua is the one who killed him. Also, Neku gets an addition to his phone where he can take photos and see what was going on at a different time that day. He can only use it 3 times per day though. At the end of the week, they fight Crazy Math Man and he kick his ass. And then he goes Donald fucking Duck, casts Firaga plus 13 or something, completely exhausting himself to bring down Neku and Joshua. Joshua goes, "No, Neku," and sacrifices himself so Neku could live. Before you go on, it should be worth mentioning that that was actually a really touching moment. Joshua's previous attitude was really off-putting to a lot of people, and after that sacrifice, it feels wrong to just rip him off like that. Joshua's sacrifice was genuinely heroic. Also, right before the fight, Neku reads Joshua's mind and finds that it was actually Sho who killed him. Either way, Neku is currently 0-2 for living partners. However, once the battle ends, it turns out that Joshua was actually alive the whole time, because everyone participating in the game is supposed to be dead, but for some unknown reasons, is able to make a pact with this guy and see the underground Shibuya. Since his partner was actually alive the whole time, Neku is forced to participate in another game, since the last one is rendered null. Therefore, regain old entrance fee and lose the new one. So what is the new one? Everyone. Everyone is the new one. Well, that's not quite it. Yes, his entry fee was collected, yes, it was every other player, and yes, he is still fucked. However, the last game was rendered null, so the entrance fee carries over. Shiki is still very dead. Yet, since he enters the game again, they still need to take the entry fee. Basically, Neku is played, used by this guy to kill Sho, who is actually a rebel, and then paid another entry fee for the penalty they issued for being partnered with a living partner. The penalty is that he can't participate in any game past this one. This is his last shot. And he still has no partner. Well, fuck. Now he literally just can't fight. And then boom! Beat defects from the Reapers and a pact is formed. So now the game is funky. Neku doesn't quite get any missions to complete and is just told, "Hey, kill me by the end of the week." Meh, that was pretty close. Just two things. First, this is the Game Master for the week, Mitsuki Konishi. Second, she gives a particular stipulation. She will be hiding. What she does is take the noise on Beat's shoulder, something he values very highly, and turns it into that pin. She then stated that she will hide this pin somewhere where she will be hiding with it. She will remain there for 6 days as she waits for you to find and defeat her. Effectively, they are playing a 6-day, life or death, high-ass stakes game of hide and seek. Riveting. So then you run around, get a key from a funky duo of Reapers after saving their ass. Now you may ask, what did you save them from? You save them from taboo noise, which is noise that doesn't follow the commands of the Reapers and often go apeshit. No one knows who's creating the taboo noise until you figure it out, you smart little cookie, and oh fuck. What? Damn it. Okay, this isn't actually an editor's note. I just want to say that it took me an hour and a half to find this picture of Hanakoma, which is really fucked up. Now Neku begins to doubt himself. Do I trust my partner like he told me? I thought he was cool. Where did I go wrong? You go to his cafe and find it wrecked. And you begin to contemplate. What happens now? Should I trust my partner? Is Hanakoma trustworthy? I'm over it. Shibuya River. So you go to the river, and I don't quite remember how or when, but you know that Joshua came to the river to find the composer. Another naming conundrum, the composer of the underground is not the composer of the game.
The composer of the game.
Okay, just ignore what I was about to say there. God, I fucking suck at this. Listen, the composer is the composer of the underground Shibuya. The conductor is the composer's right-hand man, transmitting orders from composer to all of the game masters and all the Reapers, and the game master is the one leading that current game, which so far would be Big Beef Man, Sho, and Konishi. You somehow manage to find your other two partners. Pause. Not true. You don't come across Josh. Only Shiki. You theorize that she's here because you won the game, but you didn't go back to that white room or back to the real ground because you've been shattering the rules left and right like college's shattered dreams. The game is null and void again, but because you had that deal where this was the last game, you really can't go in another. So now you're just chilling here, making your way to the composer, sort of in purgatory created by the rules. Right before you come across Megumi Kitaniji, who has been held over your head the whole game, and find him to be the composer. Throwdown, win, plot time. He informs you that he is not the composer, and goes on to state that he was involved in a little bet with the actual composer. If a proxy, handpicked by the composer, beats Kitaniji, then the composer wins. If Kitaniji beats the proxy in the fight, then the gamble goes in Kitaniji's favor. Kitaniji fought to protect Shibuya, meaning that if the proxy lost to him, then the proxy would lose the game and, as for the rules, would die, but Shibuya would be spared as Kitaniji wishes. However, if the proxy wins, then the proxy lives since they won the game, but unfortunately, their and the rest of Shibuya's fate will rest in the composer's hand, and this composer plans to end Shibuya. Also, you've probably figured out by now, but the composer's proxy was Neku, and the composer killed Neku in order to bring him into the game. However, as it turns out, another plot twist with Neku's death, Minamimoto was not the one who killed Neku. He was, however, the one making taboo noise. Basically, he was trying to usurp the composer's position. Little addition to that, yes, Sho was trying to usurp the composer's position by kicking his ass, but he didn't just make taboo noise to that end. He did some boogly woogly voodoo magic and tabooified himself after he exploded. When he used that super ultra mega Donald Duck flare on Joshua, he exploded the whole top of that tower they were on. Both he and Joshua died. However, whatever weird voodoo magic he did revivified him as a taboo. Even though at the end of week 2, you find out that Joshua wasn't your killer, that it was indeed Minamimoto, that happens to not be the case again. Minamimoto tried to kill Joshua, but failed and ducked out. The reason Joshua had a gun is because Joshua was there to kill Neku, so it turns out that Joshua is the composer of the Underground. Okay. I don't actually know how this happened, but you don't find that out yet. You find that out after the final boss. Joshua isn't even here yet. Hell, you don't even know he's alive, nor do you know he's the composer. I honestly don't know how I fucked up the order of that, but anyways. When he died, he actually ducked out to an alternate dimension because composer powers. Kitaniji then keeps fighting. This is where Joshua pulls up, by the way. Taking all 3 of your partners and melting them into him for one big-ass boss fight. Right here is one of my 2 biggest gripes with this game. This boss is ridiculous. The concept and setting and plot relevance are all super cool, but the fight is so hard. The Minamimoto boss fight was hard for that point of the game, but this is on another level. I had to knock down the difficulty, which I had not yet done even once for any difficulty-related reasons. It might have had to do with the fact that I played it on the Switch, and you might notice that this boss kind of has 2 screens, which makes sense because the DS had 2 screens and a combat system to work around that. Either way, kick his ass, and now there's an issue. The proxy just beat Kitaniji. Fuck. Joshua, however, in a moment of mercy, gives Neku a choice. Either kill Joshua, become the composer, and save Shibuya, or spare Joshua, die, and Shibuya dies. The reason Joshua chose Neku to be his proxy, and the reason he is giving him this offer, is because before the series of games, Neku was the most cold-hearted, distant person in Shibuya. Joshua is under the impression that Shibuya kinda sucks, and that Neku is a prime example of that. However, over the games, Neku grew a lot. He found that the world didn't start and end with just himself. Neku raises his gun to Joshua and hesitates. The power of friendship is just too much for Neku. Joshua doesn't give a shit. And then he wakes up back in Shibuya, and finally he's alive. Goes over to the statue where his friends promised to meet, and they're there. Rhyme too. So then what happened? Joshua, after witnessing Neku refuse to shoot him, comes to the conclusion that, despite what he believed about human nature and the way Shibuya is, Neku, the worst person in Shibuya, has changed. So he leaves it be. That about wraps up the story. Just some extra tidbits is that the alternate dimension Josh jumped to is actually the dimension of Another Day, which was a final remix exclusive chapter, and is centered around the little minigame thing called Tin Pin Slammer, where there is no game or composer or underground Shibuya and the like. Mostly. There is some secret stuff at the top of Pork City, and a super boss that took me a solid 3 hours to get to, and another solid hour or 2 to beat. However, here's where I had to take a break from script writing. It turns out that 2 terms I had heard thrown around a lot were not actually the same thing as I thought they were. Another Day is not synonymous with New Day. Another Day has a dimension hop and some tidbits that are interesting, like this Joshua and Hanakoma being the ones from the main 3 weeks, despite this being an alternate dimension, because higher beings can just do that. New Day, however, is a very, very important actual piece of story. It's a completely new story, and it turns out that I was actually 1/3 of my way there to unlocking it in my own file. So all I had to do was go to Shiki Day 7 and beat Day 7, and then beat these two dudes. After that, here's what happens in New Day. And huge warning. Even if you don't care about Twewy getting spoiled, because it's over 10 years old, I get it, keep in mind that New Day might actually have some bearing on the plot of the new game, Neo Twewy. So if you don't want that spoiled, then skip to here. Consider yourself warned. You wake up with Beat and you get a message telling you to leave Shibuya. Things that would typically happen in the Reapers game, right? But why? They just escaped the Reapers game a little while ago. Also, there's this bitch that speaks in contemporary lingo that's fly with the kid people. Also, Neku is having weird visions of Shibuya pulling a Peter Parker, some girl with Shiki's cat thing, and for some reason, Joshua with his v-neck hanging just low enough that Neku might just be having gay hallucinations. You run around and figure out that Shibuya is scrambled, and places that would lead to another place now lead to a different another place, and you don't know where the fuck you're going. You find Shiki and Rhyme, who are partnered, and then they dip. In another vision, you see Rhyme getting vored by a shark, which, if you ask me, is a pretty radical way to die, and later you find them again, and Rhyme gets fucking vored by a shark. So does that mean Joshua with gun will come to pass? Shibuya getting snapped? Then you find Joshua without gun and he's a little bitch, but you bully him into calling Hanakoma. He says hi and then immediately says he'll call you later. Later he calls you and he tells you where to go. And you go there. And he tells you that all of Shibuya is a noise. He elaborates, claiming that the Shibuya this weird unofficial Reapers game kind of thing is taking place in is all a noise, and that he's never met a Reaper capable of such crazy shit. Until now. No one else he'd met before then was capable of such a weird flex, but after seeing Coco, he kinda pieced it together. Coco enters shark mode and unleashes Shibuya on you, which is an elephant. Society. You kick its ass, and then you're booted back to the real Shibuya, alive and well. Until, surprise, Coco with gun. Then, flash forward, Coco revives Minamimoto.
Oh, yeah, I kind of forgot to mention that on your way to the composer, you found that Sho got his ass kicked, and he died. Apparently, being taboo does not prevent one from dying by crushing by a massive pile of random shit.
And if you couldn't tell, here's where the plot significance begins. She revives Minamimoto because she needs Neku for the next Reapers game Neku's in, because he just died. He needs a Zeta strong partner. Now why'd she say that? Well, you see, in the Minamimoto boss fight... Oh god, oh no. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, this girl had her name revealed in the trailer for the new game, and nothing else.
Side note, she is affiliated with this guy in an organization called the Ruin Bringers, and considering she seems to be very closely involved with this whole Shibuya inversion world is ending business, I'd wager that'll be really important.
However, that makes a very defined connection here between the end of New Day and the beginning of Neo. That most likely insinuates one of two things. Either New Day is the start of something that's unrelated to Neo, and it's just for a fake to-be-continued kind of thing, or New Day is the start of the Neo Twewy games thing. I feel like this girl sort of implies a connection here, so I'm going to assume it's the latter because that is cool. That means that Neku fucking Sakuraba is somewhere in this game, which is really cool.
Before we go on, let me show you this from one of the most recent trailers.
I have orders. Target acquired.
Okay, this was recorded December 28th, 2020, 5 months ago. Let's talk about that hard fucking read.
Also, since Koko revived Minamimoto with the intent for him to be Neku's partner, it's possible that this line where Minamimoto tells them to stick with him insinuates that he's aware of that purpose or something, maybe using the new peeps to help him find Neku. I don't fucking know.
One more thing worth mentioning is Sho. He doesn't really seem to be considered a full character by some of the trailers. What I mean by that is that one of the trailers showed each character individually of the main 4. Except for Sho. Every character got the spotlight, but him. He's still shown in all the menus and shit, but he doesn't seem to be considered a full character. Very, very suspicious. Not to mention his past affiliation with Koko, who is still on the enemy side. At best, Sho doesn't exactly share goals with the team, and at worst, he's going to downright stab them in the back. I don't know. All of this is complete speculation, but pretty cool either way. Alright, spoiler time over. Welcome back. You might notice I sound a little different. That's because all the rest of the audio of me talking was recorded December 28th, 2020. That was when I took a break from voicing to edit what I had, thinking it'd be a couple weeks of editing, then I'd voice some more, edit it, and then yada yada yada. In the 5 months it took me to edit 20 minutes of me talking, I forgot I didn't record all of it. No biggie, right? Well, yes, biggie, because the dope-ass microphone I used to record, I borrowed from my brother, who recently sold it. Fuck. So I settled and got a new microphone, a Blue Yeti. So that happened, but long story short, I will sound different from now on, just don't worry about it. Anyways, you want to learn about the combat, huh? Fine. First, I'm going to delve into the original combat system, the one on the DS. As mentioned earlier, early on into the story, Neku learns to use pins to fight. Let me give you a rundown of that. To get new pins, you can do practically fucking anything and get showered with pins. Combat, shops, story progression, you name it, you get it. You can also evolve pins. Pin evolution is bullshit. There's this weird, complicated tree that, mind you, had to be made by the community, where depending on the way you get experience for your pins, they'll evolve differently. XP differs from XP gained from combat, and XP gained from turning the damn device off entirely. Going into that weird rest mode thing on the DS or on the Switch, being in the home screen or just completely turning the Switch to sleep and then waiting, will get you XP when you next check the pin tab. If you ever looked at the tree and said, hey, I want this evolution, but it's from Shut Off XP, then my recommendation is to just pull in Animal Crossing and time travel. It's a massive fucking hassle otherwise. It only stores up to 1 week increments, mind you, so no need to travel for years because it's not going to help you. So, let's get into the pins. On the DS, Neku fights on the lower screen. By dragging from Neku, you can make him move, and by dragging faster, he becomes invulnerable for a second while he dashes. When your pins are rebooting, dashing around to not get hit is your safest bet. Beyond movement, when Neku has a pact, he can draw out the power from the pins he has equipped, shown up here, and do various things. Honestly, it's random as fuck. The first one you get is fire, soon you might get a slash pin, or one that just conjures icicles, or one that lets Neku unleash fucking death metal that kills things. All pins are activated in a specific way. These activation methods vary by pin, but the rundown is that there are some things you can do to activate pins that you either do on an enemy, on Neku, or on empty space. For instance, see how this says touch activation? Ignore that, just call it tap for God's sake. You tap the bottom DS screen. Here, just like with every other activation, sometimes you tap on an enemy, sometimes you tap on empty space, etc, etc. Another method is slash. For shockwave pins, you slash on an enemy repeatedly, and Neku goes to them and gives them a good smacking. Press is just press and hold, drag is essentially just press, but you drag it. Though, be careful to not do it too early or too fast, or else the game will think you're slashing or like dashing or something. Scratch is just that. Pick a spot and scratch back and forth. Don't scratch too wide or else it'll come up a slash. The rest are not hard to figure out. Circle and also microphone, which is DS exclusive, then there's rabbit tap, touch the pin, and automatic, which is basically just a passive pin. Now that you've figured out Neku's combat, here's where things get complicated. In TWEWY, you have a partner on the top screen. Essentially, you have to control 2 characters at once. Most enemies also come in pairs, one on the top screen and one on the bottom. Kicking shit out of either damages the other, and killing one kills the other. Now how do you do that when you can't touch the top screen? Essentially, it boils down to this. Pressing different directional buttons, or A, B, X, and Y if you're one of those weird left-handed pricks, performs combos, and pressing left and right performs attacks. As you perform these combos and attacks, you will be advancing through a little combo map with multiple branches and cards at every end. Depending on your current partner's battle style, whatever the fuck that means, and the card you get, you will gain more or less star points, which you need for fusion attacks. Fusion attacks are essentially just collect enough stars to ready a fusion attack, which you can use to deal damage to all enemies and also heal some HP. As you progress through the game, there are methods of unlocking stronger fusion attacks, which cost more stars to use, but have higher effectiveness. The other method of cooperation between player and partner is the light puck. Essentially, whenever you perform a finisher, a character will get the puck. The puck boosts the effectiveness of one finisher for the character with the puck, and then it'll take 1.6 seconds or so to switch sides to the other character, and depending on how fast you perform the switching finisher, you get a boost to the puck's effectiveness. This whole system unintentionally has a slight effect on the pin meta. Since only big moves work for the switch, and only the big moves benefit from it, slower, bigger, more powerful pins have an innate advantage. Use that information wisely. Now, moving on to Final Remix Combat, know that Final Remix Combat and Solo Remix Combat are essentially the same, minus that one pin activation method where you shake the device. That is just Solo Remix exclusive. From here on, I'm just going to assume you're on Final Remix for the Switch. Now, there's two methods of controlling. Either use the touchscreen in your fingies, or just use the Joy-Con as a Wiimote and point it at the screen. I would say it's up to preference if it really fucking wasn't. I'm gonna do you a favor right here. You prefer touchscreen. Using the Joy-Con is enough to give even the most mentally resilient a massive fucking aneurysm. Do not do it. Just use the touchscreen. Now that you're using your hand, we have a problem. There's only one screen. How do two characters fit on one screen? Final Remix's solution is to just essentially take all that cool partner combo action up there and throw all of it away. Your partner is just another pin. Shiki is a pin where you tap on the enemy repeatedly, Joshua is a pin where you slash down, and Beat is a pin where you drag him around. Now you might ask, what about the puck? What about fusion attacks? The whole combo map start gathering stuff to charge fusion attacks is now all boiled down into cross combos, which I'll refer to as CC. CCs occur when you alternate hits between Neku and his partner. When you hit a CC, it deals extra damage, increases sync rate, which is essentially the replacement for stars, and momentarily slows down time. Final Remix Combat revolves around Neku hitting the thing, partner hitting the thing, rinse and repeat, throw in a couple fusion attacks, boom. Mind you, fusion attacks are also different now. This time it's not just collect stars, push button, it's get sync rate, push button, with the added step of play some fucking Mario Party or something. For Shiki, you see a card at the top, it flashes some other ones, and then you match them. For Josh, it flashes you a couple cards, and you have to count upwards. For Beat, you have a line consisting of 4 suits of cards. You remove one card at a time, putting pairs together and causing combos. Minigame performance dictates damage done to enemies and amount healed. Now the cross combo system revolves around constantly switching hits. This means pins that let Neku hit a lot are better now. Notice that the meta of Final Remix and Solo Remix is the opposite of the DS. Now it's all about smaller pins that pump out hits, not bigger hits that pass the puck. Now I'm going to get into mechanics present in both games. Beyond all that I just explained, there are 2 more things to think about combat-wise: difficulty and levels. When you get enough XP, you level up. Simple. Level ups only affect your HP. However, note that at any time you can decrease your current level to a minimum of 1 to increase the chances of enemies dropping items. If your level is 5 and you fight an enemy at level 5, they have default chances to drop items. If you decrease to 4, you'll lose a little bit of max HP, but enemies will have twice the chance to drop items. At level 3, they'll have 3 times the chance. This system is represented by the stars here. The number of stars equals the multiplier for drop chances. The other system is difficulty. Changing the difficulty accomplishes 2 things. The obvious, which is change the difficulty, and the other system, which is change drops. The higher the difficulty, the better the drops, but also usually the rarer. On 1 difficulty, an enemy might drop a 100 yen pin, but on a harder one, it might drop 500. All drops are enemy and difficulty specific. That's all there is to it. Now, what else is there that dictates performance in combat? Well, outside of combat, there are more ways to get stronger. Let's get into out of combat prep. Essentially, this boils down to 2 things: threads and food. Food is really simple. You eat something, this bar fills up a little bit, and as time passes and you fight battles, the bar that got filled gets filled a different color and is temporarily consumed. The bars reset to full capacity unless a character was recently fed once a day. When you fully digest that food, the stat increase occurs unless it's food that boosts sync rate. If the food boosts sync rate, it gives you a sync rate boost when eaten and a bigger boost when digested. Essentially, just keep stuffing the shit out of your characters to raise their stats. Now on to threads. There are 5 slots: cap, top, bottom, footwear, and accessory. But do note that there are 6 types of equipment. 1 type for each of those slots, and another called uniform that can be equipped on either top or bottom, and still leaves the other open. Threads usually just give basic stat boosts, but as you go through the game and buy from shopkeepers, you gain esteem with them. Your friendship with each shopkeeper is individually tracked, and honestly not that hard to raise, just buy a bunch of random shit from them. When you get closer with shopkeepers, they will divulge information about various threads, and unlock that thread's ability. Sometimes it'll be threads they sell, other times it'll just be threads that exist. Once they talk about a thread, that thread's ability is unlocked and usable. Essentially, they're just more stat buffs, usually tied to one specific system or mechanic, or with just one specific character. Like this top, that gives +2 attack, but only to Shiki. You can equip it on anyone, but only Shiki will get that +2 attack. There is only one restriction on threads besides the slot you can put them in. You need a high enough Brave stat to equip threads. If your Brave stat is higher than the thread's restriction, you can wear it. Brave only increases with food. At the beginning of the game, your Brave stats start pretty low, but so do the Brave restrictions on most threads. Post-game though, Brave numbers begin to skyrocket fast. Beyond that, there really isn't anything else to The World Ends With You. So, that about sums it up. All in all, super hyped for Neo Twerry. Pretty stoked about Neku being in the game, and still a little proud of myself calling that half a year in advance. And yes, I will absolutely be making something on it whenever it comes to PC. I had to use a lot of footage that wasn't mine for this because I don't know how to record on Switch, and frankly I don't have the interest or time to figure it out. And in typical video essay fashion, I will end this with a rating. I would give The World Ends With You a solid 9.5 out of 10. Overall, I love this game. It's no large title like Skyrim or Persona, no branching plot lines and magnificent open world, but I still love this game. It has a quirky charm that I'm excited to hopefully see come to more people with the game's sequel releasing soon. The only reason it isn't 10 out of 10 is because fuck Pork City. 2 bosses, are you kidding me? This is the Reaper's game, not fucking Hollow Knight. God damn it. Whatever. Neo releases July 27th, and if you ask me, that just means you have just 1 month to complete the original Twerry before it releases, which I adamantly recommend you do. Just don't do all those secret reports post-game. Search them up, play another day in New Day, but for your sanity, don't do another day's Pork City. Alright? Alright.